You're listening to the Mechanic.com.au Smoko Sessions, where we put our premier community partners into the hot seat. This week's question is, what do you believe will happen in the future that other people consider impossible or unlikely? First up is James from NGK.
So I've heard people say that with the emergence of electric vehicles, internal combustion engine days are limited, and therefore there will be no demand for spark plugs and glow plugs. I do not believe this to be the case. Electric vehicles will gain popularity slowly, but they have their limitations, such as price, range, and the environmental impact of disposing of batteries. Meanwhile, the development of internal combustion engines continues, and in my opinion, internal combustion engines will be around for a long time.
Brendan at Penrite, thoughts on that one?
Well, obviously, we need to cut emissions, right? Which is what most OEM manufacturers try to do, and that drives new car technology into the future. So, and as I said, they're always looking for ways to improve economy on their vehicles, because if you drop the economy, then you also lower the emissions. So oils are undergoing a lot of changes at the moment to improve their use in modern engines. And a good example of that is the GM Texos 1 Gen 2 oil that's actually been designed to prevent low-speed pre-ignition in modern turbocharged engines, which is the problem with the newer, more compact engines, that they're trying to produce more power out of, and obviously less emissions. So oil, how does it affect it? But it actually does. So we're working on that, and obviously the lines of the way the cars are going, such as with hybrids, that they still have petrol engines in them and diesel engines in them to drive them, and there'll be specialised products for those. So we'll certainly work toward those in the future.
Interesting. Chris from Exeter.
Impossible or unlikely. It's a tough one. We sort of think in the future normal manual clutches and certainly automatics to some way will be replaced. Well, certainly at the moment, normal manual clutches in some instances are being replaced by fully automated manual clutches that use a solenoid instead of a clutch pedal. But both manual and automatic in the future, I think, will, depending on the way the motor industry goes, will eventually be phased out, I think, and they will be replaced by some form of coupling that will be used with electric vehicles. But that's a fair way away still.
Steve from DBA.
Combined regen braking and electronic calipers are in the works, which means new challenges in diagnosis and maintenance.
Ian from Bendix.
At the moment, with the advent of all these self-driving and electric cars, it's going to be regenerative braking will overtake conventional braking, but we still see that as in quite a distance away at the moment.
Thanks, Ian. Next is Will from Trico.
I guess it would be the opposite of a certain conversation I have nearly every month, and that's the speed of which electric cars will be adopted. If you do the math, it's going to be much, much longer than we expect. Right now the average age of vehicles on Australia's roads is 10.1 years old. So that means that if tomorrow every single car sold was a fully electric car, it would still take 10 years for them to be the most popular vehicles in Australia. Now, given the fact that 0.1% of cars sold in Australia are currently electric, it's going to be a fair few decades before we see those trends start to change.
Jeez, the electric vehicles are really coughing and hammering in this episode. Next up is Ian from Gates.
Interesting question. And look, we're seeing there's just lots of advances going on in the material science. So, really we're almost getting to the point where that the life cycle of the belts and hoses are significantly longer than we've used to before. So, we've self-tensioning belts, stretch fit belts, and obviously longer lasting and much higher performance. But one of the things that's most interesting now we're seeing coming out of Europe and even out of Asia is vehicles with stop-start, and they'll actually stop-start via the belt. So the alternator and the starter motor is one unit, and you're actually starting the engine via the belt, which is pretty interesting.
Next up is Bryden from Monroe Shock Absorbers.
We as a global manufacturer supply OE dealers or OE manufacturers, and we're seeing a growth in the electronic suspension segment. And although a number of people think that it's a long period or a long time away, we believe that electronic suspension is not that far away on a majority of our vehicles, and we'll start to see that trend snowballing as these new models come out and the technology grows.
Cheers, Bryden. Next is Johnny from Century Batteries.
Lead-acid batteries are here to stay. Well, at least for the next 10 years anyway. Although there is a lot of talk around lithium-ion batteries dominating the marketplace due to the media hype around Tesla and lithium mining opportunities in Australia, a lead-acid battery in an automotive starting application is still the most cost-efficient and safe battery in the market. Lithium-ion batteries have many benefits in specialised electric vehicle, HEV and PHEV markets that contribute to under 2% of vehicle sales in Australia.
Valid point, Johnny. Next up is Jeff from Ryco Filters.
Well, it may seem impossible, really unlikely at this stage, but we've been sort of working through what may or may not happen. But the use of augmented reality is obviously a hot topic at the moment and being used in varying ways within different industries. But we see probably a day where, in conjunction with some really smart diagnostics tools, maybe some sensors or whatever, that you can probably have a day where almost video game style that you can use some augmented reality to actually go within the engine or within components and effectively explore and diagnose what's going on. It probably sounds a little crazy, but got to think big, and the technology's coming along so quickly. Who knows what might happen? But we think that we could easily see a day where that happens.
No men in white coats, Jeff. That is definitely on the horizon. Last but not least is James from Narva.
I don't think it's a matter of doing something that is seen as impossible, unlikely, but a matter of seeing a problem or opportunity and providing a solution. Our product team is always looking for the best new thing in technology, be that an electric car, self-driving vehicles, for example. It's important to be aware of these disruptions, the challenges and opportunities that they present, and be prepared to ride the wave and service the requirements they might need. We also have teams who work closely with customers to assess their peeve points, who then go away with that information to create solutions and prototypes to address those issues.
You've definitely got to stay on the ball if you want to be one of Australia's leading automotive brands. That's all for this week's episode of Mechanic.com.au Smoko Sessions. Make sure you tune in for next week's question. What is your number one recommendation to boost sales? We'll see you next week.